please.
Carberry Montgomery,
Here.
Kroll,
Here.
McBurney,
Here.
Obrecht.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Urbandale is a national leader in character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. In conducting tonight's meeting, we expect that all participants will act in a respectful manner consistent with these principles. Item 2 is to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Kroll.
Second.
Second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, please vote. As you can tell tonight, we only have 2 council members actually physically present here tonight. We do have Councilmember McBurney and Obrecht online, so we are still conducting business that way. They are a little under the weather, so they are naturally staying away from here tonight, but still are part of our meeting.
Apologize, that passes.
Okay, thank you, that passes. Item 3 is presentations. We do have one proclamation to read tonight for National Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month is an opportunity to celebrate the rich cultural traditions and honor the positive achievements of the Hispanic and Latino American community in our nation, state, and city. And whereas Urbandale residents of Hispanic and Latino ancestry are part of a rich and diverse cultural fabric in our city and are helping to make Urbandale the best place to live, raise a family, and grow a business. Now therefore, I, Robert Andweg, Mayor of the City of Urbandale, on behalf of the City Council, proclaim September 15 through October 15, 2022 as National Hispanic Heritage Month in the City of Urbandale, and encourage all residents to embrace and celebrate diversity in our community and the many positive achievements and contributions of Hispanics and Latinos to our city and to our state and our nation. So I'm saying that, and I don't believe anybody's here to accept this tonight. Is there tonight? Thank you, Nicole. All right, then we'll move on to item 4, which is Citizens Forum. This is the opportunity to address the council on something that's not a part of tonight's agenda, and I know there are at least maybe one or two, so who wants to, so recognize, if you just raise your hand if you want to speak. Okay, sir, if you can please come up and to the podium, please give your name and address for the record.
My name is Richard Kirby. I live at 9009 Valdez Drive in Urbandale. I want to thank you, Honorable Mayor and council members, for the opportunity to talk and to the members of the city, members of the community. I don't do this very often, so I'll try to stay on task. Okay. I did send copies of this to all the city council members, and I won't take time to read it. I'll just summarize what I'm concerned about. The city has done surveys since 2018 on the bike trails and walking trails and parks in this city of Urbandale. But what I want to address mainly is the on-street bike lanes that has been somewhat designed or discussed with Aurora Avenue from 86th to 70th and from 70th, on 70th from Hickman to Meredith. These 4-lane roads, except for the small stretch on 70th down by Urbandale Avenue, the discussion has been to reduce these down from 4 lanes to 2 lanes to make 2 lanes for bicycles. I viewed the Lunch and Learn where Snyder Associates or Engineering discussed what they had researched, and that is the fact that there's only 5,000 cars that travel on Aurora per day, 6,000 to 7,500 on 70th per day. If that's a true number of vehicles, how many people is it transporting? Each vehicle can transport 4 or 5 people, which we know there's probably only about 2 per vehicle, but we have buses that handle 80 people at a time that goes to the schools in that area. So in his discussion, he also mentioned that he had no idea how many bikes would use these streets There's no number to give to that, but I don't think it would be anywhere close to 1,000, even a small percentage of this. Not only the volume of bicycle riders, but the limited amount of time that they would be using these streets. We have roughly 4 months of this year in this city, in this state, that's not conducive to bike riding due to the cold weather, icy conditions on the roads, slush, whatever. There will be some people that will use it, but the majority of people aren't out riding the bikes during that time of the year. He just also stated that the 4-lane roads are mainly built to handle more traffic than what is presently there. But if you're traveling through Des Moines on I-35, you'll see there's 3 lanes, 6 lanes. And where those 6 lanes are, they're at places where we have high traffic volumes morning and evening to handle the flow of people coming in and out of downtown each way to get on the roads. That is why the engineers back 50-some years ago was asked to design these at 4 lanes for projected growth and the use of this. We have a junior high and a high school and 2 elementary schools there. And to handle that volume of traffic, that's why they designed 4 lanes. In the surveys, a lot of the things that were discussed, but the main thing was the safety issue. That was a high point of almost every category. And I think that putting bikes on the road with vehicles is asking for trouble, possibly more than what we already have. Not only that, but you're reducing that down to 2 lanes. Those roads were also built to handle emergency vehicles. Ease and access to get to the north side of town from the 86th or the Douglas Fire Department on 70th, to travel 70th Street to get to the schools. And if you ever have an emergency at the times that schools are going on during that 6-hour period, and at the beginning of the school day or end of the school day when the traffic is a problem there, we could have a safety issue, and every second counts as far as those safety issues or those emergency vehicles getting there. I know we're just at the beginning stage of this, but I think transparency is the key to the citizens of Urbandale to let them know what possibly could be coming down the pike if this was to go forward, to give them a chance to hear the situation, find out what's going on, and communicate with you, the city council, as to what they think of this plan, whether it's a good idea or not. In all opposition, there's usually should be some type of a recommendation that maybe is something different. And the recommendation I have is that maybe you could do something like what you've done on Douglas, west of 86th, on Aurora. I don't know if it's possible on 70th, but on Aurora, you have the Gloria Day Church that runs from 86th to 82nd that has all kinds of frontage road there where you can widen the sidewalk. It pinches down at 82nd to 81st with 5 properties that back up to Aurora, which might be a smaller area where you can't do anything with it. But from 81st to 75th, you have the park, the junior high, and a church that all have large areas that you could widen the sidewalks to. And from 75th from there, you have 1 property that butts up to where the senior center is. And from the senior center on, you have the area in front of that where the pool was in the high school. All those areas would allow you to widen the sidewalks and to give the bikes a place to ride without reducing the flow of traffic to the schools. Any questions?
Appreciate your comments, so.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the council on something that's not a part of tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will then move on. Item 5, the adoption of the minutes, first from the September 20 meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Carberry Montgomery. Oh, you can still move it. Second it. Second by Kroll. Discussion, please vote.
I apologize, that passes.
Okay, that passed. All right.
I'll move approval of the city council joint work session minutes from September 26th.
Motion by
Second.
Carmen Montgomery, second by Kroll. Discussion, please vote.
Sorry, I'm just anxious.
Tell me if it's passed. That passes. Item 6 is the consent agenda. We have 11 items for approval.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Motion by Kroll,
Second.
second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, please vote. That passes. All right, moving on then to our public hearings. First is item 7.1 is a public hearing regarding the Fisher property, formerly known as the Wiggins property, request to remove a condition of rezoning at 5133 156th Street. The public notice for this was published in the September 23, 2022 Des Moines Register. And so any objections to that notice is published?
There were none.
Is for a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion by Kroll,
Second.
second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, please vote. All right, that passes. And to introduce us is our Chief Planner, Christy Bales. Christy?
Very good, thank you. The property that we're going to discuss today actually consists of 4 smaller parcels, but this is the main one, and you can see the other parcels that are surrounding it. This is a little bit different in that the petitioner, who is also the property owner, is asking that the city remove a condition of rezoning. The property was rezoned from A2, our estate residential district, to R1S, our suburban residential district, in 2019. In 2019, there were 3 conditions of that rezoning that the then property owner signed. Those are listed in the staff report before you, but we're going to focus on number 3. The new purchaser, who has considered different development alternatives, is asking for the removal of part of the last condition, number 3, and that is regarding 154th Street. So I'm going to zoom in here. You can see the single-family house and outbuildings that are there, the one access they have off 156th Street. But the request deals with 154th Street. This stub street here serves 5 houses. When it was designed as part of Bent Creek Estates Plat 1, it was not finished with a full cul-de-sac. And the best example of that is over here. You can see the full cul-de-sac, that larger bulb size, and the sidewalk that goes around it. There were temporary easements that were recorded on the lots on each side of this cul-de-sac with the intention that 154th Street would be extended onto this property here when it went to be developed. So 154th Street would straighten, we'd take the bulb part off of that, and the whole cul-de-sac, or if it was designed to do something different, pop out to 156th, it would be extended onto the subject property. Those temporary easements, temporary turnaround easements, that language is included in your staff report, and it said to use those temporary easements for ingress and egress until such time 154th Street, in this case, is extended and fully improved beyond the boundary of the plat itself. So fairly standard language for when we have temporary easements. The petitioner submitted in October of last year a preliminary plat for 3 lots. It went to the Planning and Zoning Commission. It showed the cul-de-sac being relocated onto the subject property as required by the conditions. It showed that, but it never made it to the council for their review. The petitioner put a hold on it at that time and has considered different options with this one, the latest request of the city. The city's subdivision code, the design standards, there's a requirement regarding street connectivity. We don't want neighborhoods to be standalone. We want that cross connection as neighborhoods connect into one another. That information is included in your staff report. The petitioner is aware of the condition, but still wanted to request the removal of it. Sorry, I need to check one thing. But we did discuss with him and his attorney, both of whom are here this evening, that staff would not be supportive of that removal. He did request it. It went to Planning and Zoning. Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended denial of the request to remove that condition. And so it is a public hearing because it involves the conditions of rezoning, and we feel it is not in the public's best interest to eliminate that future construction to make that turnaround permanent. This scenario that he's requested would leave that temporary situation as a permanent situation, and that was not the intention of when those easements were recorded with that substreet planned for the connection onto this property. As I mentioned, the petitioner and his attorney are here. I'll take any questions you may have as well.
All right, thank you, Christie. Any questions from the council for Christie on this?
Do you have a proposed site plan for the 3-unit subdivision?
Yes, I can show you what was proposed back in October. And that is, let me see which one's clear. This one's clear. So I'll zoom in here a little bit. This would be how 154th would be extended as a cul-de-sac to serve 3 lots. The existing house in this proposal was going to stay on the east side of the street, and then 2 future lots on the west side of the street. So the cul-de-sac would be extended, the sidewalk as well would be continued and finished off around the bulb of the cul-de-sac.
What would be along 156th Street? Nothing?
This proposal showed no access to 156th Street. 156th Street, as a condition of that rezoning, would be allowed to remain as a right in, right out off 156th Street. But this one, they weren't going to keep that extension. They were just going to go and be accessed off, excuse me, off 154th. So you can see they weren't showing a connection onto 156. They were removing that wholly.
Okay. Any other questions right now for Christie? All right. Thank you, Christie. We are in public hearing on this item. Would anyone like to address the council on this item? If the applicant would like to address the council, I'll allow that first. If not, yep.
GIS map up with other properties around it.
Yep.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is J.D. Dalton. I'm an attorney with the Dalton Law Firm at 2521 128th Street.
This one.
Yes, thank you, Christie.
Yep.
I think Christie did a good job summarizing it, so I'm not going to really repeat any of her points. Just for clarification, are the council members that are remoting in able to see this screen? My cursor on the screen here? They're able to see that? Okay.
Yes.
So I think the first point I want to make, when I initially took this in, what caught me off was the fact that you had a large development down here to the south of our property. And when that plat was approved, they approved what's been dubbed the temporary easement. Essentially, though, it runs with the land, so it is effectively a permanent easement. Unless this road is actually extended, it will run with the land and will never sunset. So even though it's dubbed a temporary, it basically can service the city as is in perpetuity. And I do have a copy of the easement if any council members would like to see it. But what surprised me is normally with the developments that I work on, you'll see the city impose whatever obligations it wants on that developer for that particular turnabout or cul-de-sac. So here, clearly they had an 80-foot easement to the right off of the screen, and then the shorter 60-foot radius or 60-foot diameter is really what we're challenging. The assumption that staff made at that time was that these different property owners to the north would ultimately be able to acquire the Wiggins property and extend the street through, similar to what's over here on 152nd. These have all since been developed. This development up here is Barrett Estates. All of these have now been developed, and there's effectively no reason that this will ever actually be extended up into this development to the north of the formerly Wiggins property. I think what Christie was alluding to is that the city at one time anticipated something like what's over here on 152nd Street. But that effectively is never going to happen at this point. So, but for this cul-de-sac condition of rezoning, which went in 2019, from my perspective, what it looks like what happened is the city made an assumption that this would sometime be extended and connect up to this larger development. It gave a pass to the developer down here to the south, which, you know, if you're trying to extend an easement from 60 feet to 80 feet, as a developer, it's much easier to do that when you've got 55 plus homes in just that plat. What effectively has happened now, though, is that additional 20-foot radius is getting shoved to the smaller home builder that's just trying to take a 6-acre parcel right here and divide it up. At one time was looking at putting 3 on it, but even the cost of that is just, especially now with inflation and everything that's happening, it's just not practical to absorb the cost of a new city street and an 80-foot turnabout with just spreading over 3 homes. So essentially what we're asking council for is a fairness review of this to say, well, was it fair to give the developer that was putting in 55 homes a pass if that was a priority, not knowing that there ever would be a guarantee that it would be extended? In exchange, essentially burdening a smaller development here with two homes on it, and trying to pass that cost on to a smaller project. The other thing that we would submit is that if you're interested in maintaining the status quo for the neighborhood, that's effectively what we're trying to do here, would be leave this cul-de-sac exactly as it is, allow the applicant to make a connection. So what we didn't show you, or what Christie wasn't able to show, is the current proposal basically just divides this long stretch of ground into 2. The existing home would be taken down, another single family residence would be put there, and that would have access and connect to this cul-de-sac. It's done all the time. There's probably 3 or 4 other projects in the last 3 years that we could show you where a property was just split in 2 and then connected to existing right-of-ways. So this home here would be taken down, a new custom home would be put there and connect to this cul-de-sac. And then what we're proposing now is another home that would be on the western side of the property that would still be a right-in, right-out only onto 156th Street. Obviously, from a tax standpoint, putting one home up isn't as good as 2. The applicant has built several other homes probably within a mile of this, nice custom homes. The applicant lives at this address. It's not purely a profit motive to try to come in and do this development. He's got family close to the area. I can vouch for him. He's a great client. He's built a home for me. It's a beautiful home. He does a really nice job. He has had communications with the neighbors. When the property was rezoned in 2019, the Wiggins family owned it at the time, and they wanted to sell it. And so from my perspective, it looks like the city was trying to figure out, at that time they knew there was no way this was ever going to extend up to the north, because at that point, all this development was done. So they were looking at a way to still try to get a bigger cul-de-sac in, and so as a condition of rezoning, that was burdened on this property. So in terms of precedent, I would submit that we're not creating a bad precedent here. What we're doing is recognizing that it just isn't effectively to burden. Doesn't make sense to try to burden a small project like this with something that still is a good cul-de-sac. I mean, if it wasn't good and satisfactory for city services, then essentially what we're saying is since 2007, the public has been in harm's way with a 60-foot radius, which I don't think anybody is saying that. And yeah, I think my last point would just be preserve status quo for the neighborhood. I mean, but for this cul-de-sac, there's really nothing exceptional about this project. I mean, it's taking a larger lot inside a single-family development and splitting it in 2 to put 2 nice homes on it. So really the only thing that's holding us up right now is the cul-de-sac issue. So with that, I'll take questions or sit down if there are no questions.
What sort of driveway are you proposing to connect the existing house area to the cul-de-sac?
I'm gonna see if I can pull up the engineering plans for the 2 lot for you. You able to pull that up, Christie? Thank you. So there you have it. You can see the property to the west would just be connecting to 156th Street, and then this house here would just be connecting to 154th.
And on this drawing, what of these roads would be public versus private cement, basically?
Well, yeah, essentially the public road would be where it's at right now, and then you would turn into a private, just a private driveway here on the west, I'm sorry, on the east, where my cursor is. That would just be like anybody else's private driveway connecting to a cul-de-sac. And then this one here would also be private to 156th Street.
I guess I should have driven out here and actually looked at this, but are there curbs around the back part of that cul-de-sac, Christie?
I don't. Yes, there are. Yeah, then the curb, so the curb would be cut to connect to to connect to a private driveway, just like any other house would connect to it.
So in appearances, it looks like a finished cul-de-sac. Christie, you think? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if we come back here and just zoom in, I mean, a lot of times when I've seen in other developments where they call it a temporary cul-de-sac, it's a gravel road. You know, it's not an improved paved surface. So here you have, if you go corner to corner on this, it's 60 feet, which that's essentially what the easement, and Chrissy did a good job of summarizing that, but I have a full copy of it here. The easement basically gave up to a 60-foot radius from the center point here. So if I took this outside corner and measured across, I would have 60 feet of paved surface there. And then as she pointed out, I mean, essentially what we're talking about is the difference from this bulb here of 60 feet to this one here of 80 feet, plus the cost of, you know, when my client, if he was able to do what we're asking you to do, he'll pave this with essentially, you know, what you would pave any other driveway with. It wouldn't be SUDAS standard city street, you know, expense with trying to extend the street and then put a 80-foot radius or 80-foot diameter cul-de-sac on it. And that was my first thing I looked at was the easement, just to make sure it didn't sunset, because when I looked at this first, I thought, well, if there is a sunset for some reason on this small cul-de-sac, then that would be a major concern for the city, because 60 foot is still serviceable, but if that were to fall off at some point, then obviously they would have a major incentive to try to push that through. But the only reason this will ever be triggered to go away is if the city actually forces the property owner to the north to move that street onto it. Otherwise, paragraph 6 of the easement basically says it's deemed to run with the land and is binding on the grantor, which at that time was Mr. Rivers Development and any successors. So there is really no prejudice to the city if for example, it's not approved and ultimately just one home is built on there, that easement stays in perpetuity. It's not going to just fall off and now you're not going to have a cul-de-sac there. The only way it is tore out and is punched through is if we wouldn't get a waiver of this condition and someone were to try to do a larger development in here, which is not what my client's proposing to do.
Okay. All right. Anything further?
No,
All
thank
right.
you, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dalton. All right, we are still in public hearing on this item, and would anyone else like to address the council on this, either for or against? Yes? Yep, please come up.
Hi, my name is Christina Sly, and I live at 4910 154th Street. So I am right here.
Okay.
This plan that Mr. Fisher has proposed, I do agree with it and support it. It is only going to include one additional household driving through. Kind of a big concern with a lot of the people that live along Northview is the amount of cars that come in and out and going fast. Bent Creek has become a big neighborhood, and really at 156th and Northview is the only access point other than on the other side on 142nd, and that services the Bent Creek Meadows. So, I mean, I support this because I don't want this cul-de-sac going through and a bunch more houses and all the traffic, because with children outside, I mean, I know people are supposed to follow the speed limit, but they don't. They just blare down and don't stop like until right before the stop sign. So I feel like this is a good plan. His other plans, the people in our cul-de-sac here have not liked it, but his proposal, I mean, we are favorable with it. A lot of it has to do again with the traffic going in and out. In the 12 years I've lived there, there's been no problems with the garbage pickup or anything like that going through, but I would like to cast my support for his plan. I do kind of have one little thing that I'd like to talk about, whether if his plan goes through or another one later on. I guess I want to know, is a sidewalk for sure required with his plan? Do we have to have a sidewalk?
Christie's nodding her head, so yes.
Okay, so, you know, then the question, you can see right here that the sidewalk, you know, is gonna, I mean, is it gonna follow suit and cut through my grass and my neighbors? Or, you know, what do? You have a 2-lane road, then it kind of goes out to the circle. So I guess, you know, my main concern, and my neighbor across the street who can't be here tonight, is kind of placement of the sidewalk. And maybe we don't know that tonight, but that would be kind of a big question, I guess. But overall, I do support his proposal.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there anyone else like to address the council on this?
Quick second, Mayor.
Sure.
So I could just answer the sidewalk question. I guess what the intent originally was is that, again, the cul-de-sac would be removed, the adjacent property owners would get more of their yard back, and then a sidewalk would be extended to the north. Going back through the records, the city does have funds in escrow for that work. Granted, it was escrowed 20 years ago, but the developer had a bond, didn't want to keep continuing to renew the bond, so paid the city the escrow. So again, it was never really intended to go around the cul-de-sac. So I think that's just something, if the cul-de-sac stayed as it is, that's something we have to talk about. But the intent was always to remove it, give them their front yards back, and have a standard sidewalk that followed along the right-of-way.
Okay. All right, is there anyone else like to address the council on this? All right, seeing none, then I'll ask for a motion and a second to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Kroll,
Second.
second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, please vote. Okay, that passes. All right, then, did you want to answer, Bridget, do you have any additional questions you want to ask Christie at this point, or?
Whatever I asked you, if you remember.
Well, I was looking to see if John's question answered your question, John's comment answered your question. So essentially, the bulb part would be straightened up, and
Can
that,
you put the back,
sorry.
the screen back up?
This would be a straight street, so the sidewalks would come back into the right-of-way, and that curve where they come into their driveway now would follow along the straight street, then be extended with the bulb onto the subject property, and the sidewalk would follow around the end of the bulb. Sidewalks are, and why I was nodding my head, sidewalks are required on all public streets. So that would have to be part of that project when it was extended. And that's what they showed on the plat as well, that when they showed how they could accommodate. They show the sidewalk and how that would be extended, how this part at the bulb right here on these two lots would be a straight street. They'd take the bulb part out and they'd relocate it, the whole circle, onto the subject property.
So we have money to pay for that work? Is that what you were saying, John, or?
Saying that we do have some money, again, you gotta remember, this was money that was put in almost 20 years ago, so it's not quite as much, but from what I found, we had the cash escrow, I think it's like $1,600 for the sidewalks, and then roughly $9,300 for basically extending the amount of paving up to the property line. So there is a bond on that would go towards this future work. And again, that bond was from the original developer.
So who would pay the difference between the,
I would
20
say the new developer.
okay.
Really, once they bonded, I don't know how you would still get the money out of the previous developer.
I got a question as well.
Go ahead.
The current, I guess, turnaround, is it big enough for city services, functionally? Is 60 feet good enough for the trash and the fire trucks and the things like that mentioned in the staff report?
I would say currently it does function, it does work. It is much smaller, and it'd be a non-standard one. So all I can say is it's not our ideal turnaround.
And then if we left the existing turnaround and continued the sidewalk, would we use the funds that we have and the developer would have to replace any additional funds for completing a sidewalk if we left the existing bulb as is?
Correct. And I think that's where we'd have to decide. If we left it, likely you would have to continue the sidewalk all the way around on the north side.
And if there's a deficit, maybe the proposed developer would be the one that covers that cost?
That's what I would say, yes.
Okay.
Larry, I have a few questions because I'll be honest, I thought this was going a completely different direction when I first read this. So it sounds as though the proposal is what's being built would be private, right? So anything extending beyond that bulb would be privately owned by the Fishers.
Yes, right, Christie, yeah.
Yes, they're
When I
proposing a
initially read
private
this-
driveway off the end of the current cul-de-sac.
So what is the staff seeing that would make them not want to recommend us removing this easement or removing this condition? Why do we think that we need access off 156th Street?
154th Street?
Well, no, because it was, I guess I was under the assumption that it was to create access from both 156th and 154th. So I guess I'm just confused on why staff's not recommending it.
So it doesn't have to, the two ends don't have to connect. 154th does not have to connect to 156th. When we wrote the conditions in 2019, it was they could keep the 156th Street access where the existing driveway is as a right in, right out, but they're not required to keep a 156th address, nor are they required to connect 154th to 156th. When the seller, but we wanted to make sure that 154th was extended at least onto this, whether it be a cul-de-sac or a street connection back to 156th, that we finished 154th as originally intended.
And part of it is for access for fire and EMS into that area too. I mean, if
Yes.
we allow this, I guess I see that with the drive that was shown by the applicant, seems to me like we'd have problems with trucks getting into that property and turning around if they ever had to service that property. Whereas if we do what was contemplated, at least that cul-de-sac extends up there and our vehicles can still turn around adequately and still service those properties. Part of the issue, I mean, that's the way I see it here too.
Yep, so this proposal in front of you finishes off as our regulations require with the larger cul-de-sac being designed at the end of that street.
Okay.
Larry, did
So
you have
what
other
separates
questions?
this from? Yeah. So what separates this from other properties we've seen with extended driveways that go into, I'll call them different configurations at the end of the driveway towards where the house is at. I guess that's how I look at the proposal from that the pictures attorneys were talking about. It's not standard, but I guess what's to stop them from doing it on their property that way compared to other properties that.
I guess I'd
something
need a
similar.
specific example on where you're talking about a driveway just comes off a public street. There could be history in that, you know, something hasn't been rezoned or something hasn't been developed and that's, you know, part of the original access. That's a hard question to answer without a specific example. And there are different scenarios. I mean, this one has direct access onto 156th Street. Every new development that comes in, new development doesn't get an individual lot access onto our arterial street. So if this were being developed as one new lot, it wouldn't get its access onto 156th Street, except for that condition where we recognize kind of the history and being between two developments, then they did get to keep that. So I'd almost need more of a specific, but I think it's better, you know, one house is allowed to stay. He has one house, he can keep one house. We're not requiring him to put a cul-de-sac if he just keeps the one house as it is, and doesn't develop it and doesn't plat more lots. So he wants to pursue a development. This was a condition of the development. But if he just wants to keep his one existing house as it is, then he can do that, and someone in the future can be mindful of those conditions of rezoning and apply it to a development they see in the future.
So the initial rezoning was for a development purpose.
The initial rezoning was the property was non-conforming. So it was allowed to stay as it was, but it was substandard in terms of overall lot size. So if that house would have burned down or they would have wanted to put an addition on the existing building, they needed to have it compliant with the zoning ordinance. And they were anxious to sell, and you know that's one of those things that when you're looking at, is it conforming? What happens if it burns down, or you know, well, you couldn't do it. So they got the rezoning compliant before they sold it.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
So if we approve this, it's gonna look like what he showed us. Can you pull that back up? And so going back to the sidewalks, it's gonna be a street that basically ends in his driveway.
That's what he shows as his concept plan, like this. Yeah.
And so we would straighten out
No.
the lots, the existing lots on the end?
No, he's asking for that condition to be removed. There would be no straightening out of the lots and the sidewalk. He's just asking that they not have the turnaround put onto their property.
And
So no.
The sidewalks would not extend beyond where they currently are then either.
Oh, that's what John kind of said. We'd have to look at that because if you look at the aerial, I'm not sure if what you do with the sidewalks that aren't there, what I'll call on the top side, the north side of the driveways.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about how that would get continued. It's on land they own, and we'd have to look at if that would be included within the parameters of the temporary construction easement. But I don't know at this point if we would have permission to make anybody connect that gap.
I guess, I mean, I want to approve this, but I don't feel like I have enough, like, answers with what we're being given about the sidewalks and that sort of thing. Because I think just popping a driveway on the end and calling it a day is not going to make this look very finished. And it is a very finished existing neighborhood. And I would want to see the north half sidewalks completed and have a plan for that. I don't know if that makes
Would we
sense.
be able to, would we be able to table this till the 18th when we're not as dispersed with technology and maybe a little bit more back together?
Well, I mean, and that's a good point, Adam, as well, because, you know, as for point of order, this comes by virtue of a denial from planning and zoning, so we only have 4 council members here tonight. So to approve this for the applicant tonight would require a unanimous vote of the 4 members that are here, so, I'll leave it to the applicant whether they wanted to defer or not until we have a full council and we have all our council members here tonight. I think that we're okay doing that. Okay, would you ask for a deferment then? Okay.
I guess I would like to see better pictures of what this is gonna look like if we approve it.
You're going to have to direct that to
Yes.
the applicant, because we won't,
Yes.
okay, so it's clear. I know
But
you're-
where the sidewalks are gonna go, where your driveway is gonna go, and who's paying for all of that extra work that's not on your property, the sidewalks and any replacement of curbs.
So, we've closed the public hearing, so there would be no additional input, public hearing input at the 18th.
Just a simple motion, defer to the 18th.
Okay, all right.
I move to defer the item till the meeting of the 18th.
Okay, motion by Carberry Montgomery, second by Kroll. Discussion, please vote.
And Mayor, if I could add, if staff could send us that proposal that was provided, I think Christie said that was their initial proposal and something may have changed since then, but if we could just get a copy of it to,
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
the plans,
three,
what it
the
is that
three
they're
lot
looking for.
proposal. Yes, we'll get that to you.
yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you, Christie, I appreciate
you're
it.
welcome.
All right, so that motion passes, so we are deferred till the 18th.
And will we still be under the 4/5
Yes,
supermajority then?
yes. So it still require 4, it would still require 4 votes from the council to pass it, to approve it, yes. All right, thank you, everyone, for that. Item 7.2 then is a public hearing regarding Lot 4 Walnut Crest Plat 3 amendment to the comprehensive plan and to the Walnut Crest Plan Unit Development Master Plan at 4475 to 4545 156th Street. The public notice for this was also published in the September 23, 2022 Des Moines Register. I ask you, are there any objections to that? Notice is published.
There were none.
That's for motion of the public hearing. Motion by Kroll,
Second.
second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, please vote. Okay, that passes. Christie?
Very good. We are going to stay on the 156th Street corridor, but come south a little bit towards the intersection of 156th Street here, Meredith Drive, east-west along the north. This is the come and go at the corner car wash, multi-tenant retail building. The property that's involved in this PUD amendment request is highlighted here in blue. This has had a few proposals over time since the PUD was originally approved several years ago. Most recently, we had looked as a city at a site plan for 3 apartment buildings, 3 24-unit apartment buildings were planned on that property. That project did not go forward. That was a few years ago. Nick Jensen, developer and applicant for you today, came and discussed this with the city and is petitioning the city to amend the PUD to allow for townhomes on this parcel. Townhomes weren't part of the original PUD scenarios for this property. And I'm going to click over to their current concept plan because I think that's a little bit easier to follow. Get out here. They are requesting a PUD amendment in order to allow the townhomes in substantial conformance with this concept plan you see here. Essentially a density of 12 units per acre, so it will allow up to 40 units on this parcel. We reviewed this and would require 2 points of access, one off of 156th Street and then one to the north to that kind of shared frontage road, kind of how you get to the full movement access. The property would have setbacks 45 feet to the east, over 50 feet to the west. There is landscaping that's required with this project because it is next to commercial on what is existing commercial on the west side and planned for future on the west side. All the townhome units will have at least all townhome units will have a 2-car garage, and 2 vehicles will also be able to park in their parking lot. We do require some visitor parking, and they do show that on their concept plan here. Buildings would be 3 stories in height. So first floor would be essentially the garage and the access. A deck would be off the back side of the second floor. And you can see those decks are kind of darkened in here, and then a 3rd story. Staff is recommending approval of the PUD amendment. Nick is here tonight, as is Eric Cannon from Snyder and Associates, the engineer on the project. If this is approved, you will then see a site plan for it. They're going to maintain ownership. They're not going to subdivide it into townhouse lots. They'll maintain and control all of that as one overall ownership. So as I mentioned, staff's recommending approval, subject to the comments listed in your staff report, and I'll take any questions you may have and then leave it to them if you have any questions for the applicant.
Okay, thank you, Christie.
I have a question. You just threw me a loop there at the end about the ownership. What is that? How is that different than normally? Does that mean they're going to rent them all, or?
So these will not be for sale lots or units.
Okay.
And Nick can probably give you more information on that detail if you'd like.
And how many, so the parking spot, the visitor parking is kind of under a lot of lines. How many visitor spots do you?
On this, we required 1 per 4 units, so there are 10 parking spaces there. So each townhouse has 2 garage stalls, 2 driveway stalls, and then there's some visitor if needed. This also has sidewalks that you can see on both sides of the street that will be extended to the south to that connection and to the north to the future commercial that was envisioned to the north and closer to Meredith.
All right.
The access to 156th, is that going through commercial currently?
Yes.
All right, any further questions for Christie at this point? All right, we are in public hearing on this. Would the applicant like to add anything at all, or?
Hi, good evening. Nick Jensen with Caliber, Iowa. Christie did a nice job with the overview of this parcel. I don't have much to add, but would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Any questions from the council? I guess not. All right, thanks, Nick. All right, we are still in public hearing. Does anyone else like to address the council on this, either for or against? Okay, seeing none, then I'll ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Carberry Montgomery.
Second.
Second by Kroll. Discussion, please vote. All right, that passes. So we have 2 items for consideration.
Move approval of the Lot 4 Walnut Creek Plat 3 amendment to the comprehensive plan.
Okay, motion by Kroll,
Second.
second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, please vote. That passes.
And I move approval of amendment to the Lot 4 Walnut Creek Crest 3 PUD master plan.
Motion by Kroll. Is there a second?
Oh, yeah, second. I was waiting.
Second by
Sorry, I was
Carberry
waiting to vote
Montgomery.
yes.
Discussion, please vote.
So excited about the project. Focusing on my voting.
All right, that passes. All right, thanks, I appreciate it. That passes.
When are we going to see the site plan? Soon?
In about 2 weeks.
Okay.
All right, great, thank you. All right, item 8 then is to establish public hearings. First is item 8.1, the public hearing, the City Hall roof replacement. AJ, can answer any questions if there are?
So moved.
Motion by Kroll,
Second.
Second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, please vote. That passes. Item 9 is one item, regular agenda items. Item 9.1 is to consider the equipment purchase for the police patrol vehicle. Chief's going to comment, so it wouldn't.
No, just any questions if there are any. This is for our CIT unit. The cost for this vehicle will be reimbursed by the Heart of Iowa region as part of our 2080 agreement with them. And then we were fortunate enough, we've talked to Stivers, they ordered a couple extra hybrids, so we were able to also get this vehicle will be a hybrid as well.
Wonderful. All right.
Move approval of council letter 7215.
Motion by Kroll.
Second.
Second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, please vote. All right, that passes. That takes us to mayor and council items. Adam, I'll start with you. You have anything tonight?
Just thank you that the technology worked and I didn't have to expose everybody to whatever the bug this is.
And we thank you
appreciate
too.
that.
Yes, we appreciate that as well. Amy?
Thanks for everyone for holding down the fort while I was gone. I appreciate it.
Oh, you were gone.
I was gone. Oh.
Bridget?
Oh, I just wanted to congratulate the police department. I thought the run for the badge with Mayor Anduig was great. The weather was perfect. The city manager's office was very well represented.
Curtis.
And the Brown family and.
Yes. But I thought that was a great event, and it was a great day for it, so.
How many miles did the mayor run?
The mayor shuffled with the city manager around the pond and back.
It's 3/4 of a mile. And we did it with smiles on our face.
Excellent, excellent.
I wanted to be back to award the first
I mean,
child with the medal. That's why I wanted to
Of
be.
course, of course.
So yes, very good job on that event, I thought, so.
Should be noted, Mr. Brown's child beat him by a significant.
Children.
Well, just the one.
So, all right. Larry? Do you have anything?
Just second what Adam said. Yeah, I appreciate that we have the ability to actually tune in without getting the rest of the council sick. And just a reminder that our Grow Solar applications need to be in by October 14th. So we have just a little over a week. So for those of you who are interested, please go out to Grow Solar on Facebook and make sure that you visit their website and get your applications in.
All right. Thanks, Larry. Hope you're feeling better.
AJ, could you make sure that the city pushes out that information on our social media?
Great call.
Certainly. Larry, could you repeat? Oops.
Just the gross solar.
No, the date, the deadline, please.
The deadline is October 14th, and there is a very recent posting from Grow Solar out there that the city can share. That I can get with Derek if you want.
Next Friday. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And Matt is absent. So with that, ask for a motion to adjourn.
Do you have anything?
I'm sorry. Yes, tomorrow is the deadline, just to note, with the chamber for Citizen of the Year and Business of the Year. So if you have somebody you want to nominate, make sure you get that into the chamber by tomorrow. I guess that's one thing I would note.
Can we mention the passing of Eileen Lemon?
And yes, that's thank you. So, and also want to acknowledge the passing of Eileen Lemon, a former council member in Urbandale, and we were able to honor her with the Chamber Hall of Fame last year while she was still with us here. So our thoughts go to her family as well. So thank you for that.
I think there's Mary Polson organized a GoFundMe to
Yes.
help do something in memorial.
Yes, a memorial for Eileen. I'm not sure what,
I don't remember what it was, but it's out there.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
So with that, then, yes, I'll ask for a motion second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. For now, for